Hello, and welcome to Spokane County Spotlight. I'm County Commissioner Josh Kerns, and my guest today is Todd Mielke, the CEO of Greater Spokane Incorporated. Todd, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Josh. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. And Todd, as we get started, could you give our audience a little bit of background about yourself?
Certainly. I'm a Spokane native, born and raised, and like I say, kind of a local product. Graduated from Shadle Park High School, attended area colleges, and had a couple of my own businesses. I'm a former state legislator, former staffer in the state legislature, as well as a House member, and then served in your position as a county commissioner for nearly 12 years.
All right. Todd, in your new role at Greater Spokane Incorporated, for those who might not be familiar with Greater Spokane Incorporated,
Right.
Could you give us kind of a high-level overview of the organization?
Certainly. So first of all, it's been around for a long time. First was created in the 1890s, initially 1893, and then reincorporated in 1898. And continues to exist. It's gone through transformations, but the mission statement has basically been the same since the 1890s, and that is it's an organization that leads transformative business and community initiatives, obviously with a lot of partners. And so, today, people would classify GSI, Greater Spokane Incorporated, as a business development organization. Our job is to make sure that we have an environment where businesses can be successful.
All right. So, as CEO of GSI, what's your primary role?
Trying to figure out what the biggest challenges are facing businesses. And sometimes that changes quite frequently, and we have to be able to kind of pivot and be able to address those concerns. In some cases, it could be a regulatory issue or a tax issue that makes the environment a little bit less competitive for area businesses. In other cases, it's infrastructure that they need. But my job is to make sure that we're out listening to businesses, really understanding what they need to be successful, and doing everything we can with our partners to create that environment here in this region so that that can happen.
It seems such an array of things that your organization does. How large is your staff, and how many different individual departments do you have in the organization?
We're a small organization, and we're a small nonprofit organization. That's what we are. We have 31 employees. And we try to do it all. Everyone says, you really ought to think about doing this. It seems like it's always additive, nothing ever gets taken off the plate. But really what we're focused in is in these primary areas. The number one issue, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, is education and workforce. Talent to create the environment where these businesses can be successful is extremely critical and important. We have government and regulatory affairs. As I mentioned, tax and regulatory policies impact businesses greatly. We have one focused on businesses that are already in the area, and that department is startup expansion and retention. We have another one focused on businesses outside the area, which is business recruitment. We have a Marcom function, marketing and communication. We do investor relations, finance and administration, and we also have a person that really coordinates a lot of the dialogue about agribusiness. We continue to be a huge hub for the agribusiness industry that surrounds us in eastern Washington and northern Idaho.
Yeah, and that's something that really is a major part of our economy that I think a lot of folks kind of forget about when they think of
Right.
sort of regionally here in Spokane County.
Right.
So,
and there's one I actually forgot about. It's also a committee that we take a look at, and that's called Forward Fairchild, recognizing that we will soon have the largest Air Force tanker base in the nation in Fairchild Air Force Base. It is the largest single site employer of anywhere we have in all of eastern Washington, northern Idaho, western Montana, northeast Oregon. So it is extremely significant, and it drives about $1.5 billion worth of economic impact every year to this community.
yeah, it's huge benefit to have in our community. Thank you for your organization's work on helping protect Fairchild and keep them housed where they're at. So.
Well, and people ask us about that too, and say, why is GSI so involved in it? It's the business community that led the effort to raise the money to purchase the land and then gave it to the federal government more than 75 years ago. 5 years before the Air Force was created, it was actually given to the Army Air Depot, or Army Air Corps, as an air depot. And so that was the business community that put that together on behalf of this region.
Yeah, and which I think sort of the business community's tie into Fairchild is very evident at the Assumption of Command event that was held just about a month ago. I mean, you and I were both there, and business was very well represented at that event. And I think that just ties back to the origins of Fairchild Air Force Base.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So for With Greater Spokane Incorporated as an organization, what are your main funding sources?
Diversified. It's really kind of interesting because of the multiple counties, so 39 counties that we have in the state, all but 6 have a dedicated funding source for economic development. Typically through an entity called a port district. And they're the ones that they raise the money, it's a portion of the property tax that gets dedicated to that, and they provide infrastructure for economic development. We're one of 6 counties that do not have that. And so what we rely on is a diversified portfolio of revenues. It includes our investors. Some would call them members, but they're our investors. They believe in what we do and think it's absolutely essential for this community. We do events. We do a lot of events throughout this community. So not only do we have the people who pay to attend those events, but then we have event sponsors as well who want their name out. We have program sponsors. I named a number of the programs that we have, and we have people that say, I like that one, I'm going to invest money in that one. We receive grants. We try to go after grants whenever possible. And then we have municipal contracts with the municipalities, including Spokane County, that say we're going to invest in economic development, and we believe that GSI is an entity that can help forward that. And so we have partnerships with a lot of the municipalities here in the area.
Okay. Can you explain how Greater Spokane Incorporated became a combination of not only a chamber, but also an economic development council? And is that a common structure? Is that unique?
Right. Certainly. It happened in 2007. And we're not the first, we're not the last in the nation to be able to do that. What's interesting is it happened a year before the Great Recession, and so some people would say you're truly visionary, and we're trying to incorporate all of your costs into one entity. But I think what it really came down to is typically a Chamber of Commerce is focused on tending to the needs of existing businesses in the region, doing everything you can to create a business environment where existing businesses can be successful. Economic development councils or economic development entities tend to focus on businesses that are outside the area. They're trying to recruit them to the area. But once again, they're going to spend a lot of time focused on creating an environment where those businesses can be successful. In 2007, community leaders basically said, wait a minute, I have 2 entities that are trying to create an environment where businesses can be successful. The only distinction is one is focused on businesses that are already here. The other one is focused on businesses that you would like to recruit to be here. And I think the other thing that came through that kind of look at how we were organized was the notion that says if businesses that are already here are doing well, it will become attractive to businesses outside the area to take a look at a region. Mm-hmm. So that was the decision. The Spokane Area Economic Development Council and the Spokane Regional Chamber of Commerce merged in 2007 and became Greater Spokane Incorporated. Which is a business development organization. It created a new category, or I should say, fit into a category that other communities had already gone down that path in other parts of the nation.
All right, okay. Coming back to sort of the organization as a whole, what are some of the specific services that Greater Spokane Incorporated offers?
You bet. It's best defined in a graphic that we developed. And really what we took a look at were what are the things necessary to kind of really create an environment where businesses can be successful. One of the things that we found is 3 of the services, 3 of the focuses were foundational. Any community that was going to be successful in economic development had to have those present. And really what they are is it's talent, we list it as achieve. It's business climate, and our Government Regulatory and Affairs Department focuses on that. And the other one is infrastructure. We list it as build. Those are the 3 things that every community needs to have in place, and we partner with all kinds of organizations to make sure those foundational elements are in place. Above those, we have other strategic business priorities. And those really are reflective of where we think a business is in its development cycle. Are they in the startup phase? Are they in the expansion phase? Are we trying to retain them in this community? Because like we're trying to recruit businesses to come here, other communities are trying to recruit our businesses to go elsewhere. And then the third one is recruitment. What's interesting is usually when we talk about economic development, the focus has always been just on recruitment. Well, I got to tell you, most of the job creation comes from businesses that are already here. And if you only focus on recruiting businesses outside the area, you're going to hear about it from the businesses that are already here saying, what are you doing for me? Yeah. So we take a holistic view at economic development and all the different pieces that we believe are necessary for businesses to be successful.
Okay. Can you explain to our viewers what an ADO is and how Greater Spokane Incorporated fills that role for Spokane County?
Certainly. So ADO stands for Associate Development Organization. It is a designation under which the state partners for economic development purposes. So for example, we have 39 counties in the state. We have 34 ADOs, Associate Development Organizations. The way that process works is the county commissioners designate which organization shall serve as the ADO. The only criteria is that it should be an organization that is regionally focused and that is focused on economic development. So once that designation is made by the county commissioners, then what happens is there's some money that comes from the state to help support the overhead costs of the organization. Like all things, it's diminished over the last several years. But then what happens is any business that approaches Washington State and says, we've never been in the Northwest and we're thinking about looking at Washington State, the Washington State Department of Commerce then sends out a message to all the ADOs and says, we have a company interested in Washington State. Do you have property available? What kind of proposal can you put together to lure them to this state? The Washington State Department of Commerce then takes all those proposals, puts them together, presents them to the company, and hopefully the company lands somewhere in Washington State, preferably Spokane County.
Well, it sounds like Greater Spokane Incorporated clearly is a great resource for businesses. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little, maybe a recent success story that your organization has had?
Certainly. And like I said, what we do is we take a look at anything that's going to really have an impact on the economy of the region. Most recently, there's been a lot of attention given to a company called Katera. They make cross-laminate timbers. Typically, that's been used primarily in the housing industry, but it's got a resurgence where it's being used for commercial purposes. And so they're putting together a manufacturing facility in the valley. It will not only serve this region, but it will serve nationally as a construction product supply company. Right next to them, there's a company called Progress Rail. That's also locating in Spokane. New business. It's also related to Katera's byproduct that's taking a look at Spokane and moving forward. We certainly are hearing about Project Rose on the West Plains, which is a large distribution facility, would very quickly become one of the largest facilities at more than 2 million square feet in the facility, and one of the largest employers at an estimated 1,800 to 3,000 employees once it's fully ramped up. And so we anticipate an announcement of that coming up shortly. And then I think the last one is one where we have spent several years working with the Air Force to really make that designation of Fairchild being the largest tanker base in the nation. And so with that, we go from 34 aircraft being based at Fairchild to nearly 60 aircraft based at Fairchild. That means all the support personnel to maintain those aircraft and keep them flying. It also means capital investment to make sure the infrastructure is at Fairchild Air Force Base. And then it drives probably another 1,000 to 1,600 military staff and their dependents that come to this community that are going to be part of our economy. So those are some of the things that we've seen probably just in the last 12 to 18 months that we see going. And we see tremendous interest of people looking at Spokane, both as individuals, coming as employees, as well as businesses, for a lot of reasons. Okay,
and I know Greater Spokane Incorporated has been involved a lot with the University District as well.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on your involvement with the U District and how GSI helped expand that?
You bet. So the business community, I mentioned Fairchild Air Force Base. Other strategic investments the business community has made is through an effort called Momentum back in the late 1980s and 1990s. There was a fundraising effort. Part of that effort purchased what is now the River Point campus. It was old railroad ground that didn't get developed during the Expo 74 World's Fair. So it was intended to be a collaborative higher education campus. So we went down that path and started developing it. It was to bring people into the downtown core when so many downtown areas were kind of dying off. The next thing was to recognize, though, that maybe it should have a focus. One of the things that we realized is we're the largest healthcare center between Seattle and Minneapolis, between Calgary and Salt Lake City. So if we're going to maintain that designation as being this regional healthcare hub, we have to think about how we backfill those positions, those medical provider positions, as those people retire. So then kind of birthed the idea, no pun intended, of having really the focus of that campus be healthcare. So that's really the concept between the University District and the River Point campus, is a collaborative higher education campus focused on training the next generation of healthcare workers. So we call it Vision 2030, really trying to make sure that not only do we have all the components, School of Pharmacy, School of Nursing, now the medical school, that not only one but two medical schools in Spokane. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. Next is recruiting more research, and then recruiting the companies that are really interested in that research and in looking at life science companies locating to Spokane. So it's exciting. Again, healthcare, 20% of our economy. It's 1 in every 5 people working in the Spokane region are working in something related to healthcare.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you're emphasizing the importance of it, and I mean, you're spot on. You really are. One of the common themes I've heard through a lot of your answers is small business, and sort of the emphasis in small business. Could you elaborate a little bit on the importance of small business to our community?
Absolutely. So I mentioned before, a lot of people think economic development is just about recruiting businesses from outside to come here. I would say that where we create more jobs and frankly have more loyalty to this region is really looking at the businesses that are already here. And they start off as small businesses. We have, I think, an extremely innovative program called Startup Spokane, helping entrepreneurs figure out how to launch new businesses. And some of those really have not had a lot of experience starting businesses. So we start there, get them launched, help them put that all together, find some initial seed funding, write their business plans, those kinds of things. And then from there, we're trying to help them expand. And again, that's where most of the job creation will occur. So we do things like Biz Street, which is kind of a professional development for business owners and managers who may not have that specific background. So Biz Street brings in expert speakers on a variety of topics and provides that. We do business after hours, opportunities to network with other businesses and grow their base. We have a program that really focuses on government contracting, potentially one large customer base for small businesses. But before you can ever enter that world, you have to get pre-qualified. So we walk them through that process of how to become a qualified government contractor, show them how they find out about what contracts are out for bid, and then help them prepare their bid documents to be able to do that. And there are tens of millions of dollars, hundreds perhaps, of government contracts that get awarded to Spokane area businesses. So those are just a few of the examples of the things that we're doing to help small businesses in the region.
Okay, all right. One of the things that we keep hearing about is for new businesses that are coming to Spokane County in the region, is the desire for an educated, well-prepared workforce. Could you explain how GSI is helping to meet that need?
You bet. I would say that this is the #1 question that we get anymore, not only from businesses that are looking at coming to this area saying, can I find the talent that I need to really make sure my business is successful, and can I grow my business? We're also getting that from existing businesses that are looking at expanding. You know, it used to be we'd get out of college and we would relocate to wherever the business is. Now businesses are relocating to where they can find the talent. And this is part of the baby boom generation being the largest one. They're retiring now, and even as big as the millennials are, it'll never be big enough to completely replace the baby boomers. So we have 3 different approaches on how to make sure that we have the talent pool needed for businesses to be successful. The first one is develop it. We're going in, we're working with all the schools, school districts, and the superintendents to make sure that and when we measure talent, I should say, it means how many people in your workforce have something after a high school diploma. Is it a certificate? Is it a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, advanced degree? That's the measurement across the nation. So we're working with the K-12 system to make sure that starting in middle school, kids are thinking about high growth, high demand careers, and we're getting them out. We do business after school, 40 different locations through the school year, more than 400 students who are really trying to get exposure to different careers so they can figure out what classes they're going to take in the remainder of their K-12 system. So we're working on developing it, making sure that they're going in a direction that interests them and they go on beyond high school. The second thing is we're recruiting talent. And that is, as young people in these large metropolitan areas start to settle down and think about the cost of buying a house, or think about how much time they're spending in traffic, they're saying, maybe this isn't the right place to settle. And we're getting an extremely large influx. We need to make sure this community continues to stay attractive to that group of people, so recruiting it. And then the last category is increasing it, which we have a lot of people already in the workforce who are adults that started off getting some sort of certificate or degree, and life came along and they didn't finish it. So through a program called Greater Minds, we work with employers and the employees to talk about those who are interested in going back and finishing. And so we're kind of their navigator. We help them figure out what programs are available in the region. We help them get enrolled, working with the higher education community. We work with the employers on incentives to be able to go back. I know Spokane County is involved in this program as well. And through this, hopefully what it means for employers is the next time they have an opening higher up in their organization, they've already trained somebody in their organization to be able to step into that position. So all three of those things are absolutely critical to making sure that we have a talent pool for businesses to be successful in this community.
Yeah, that Greater Minds initiative that your organization is spearheading really is just such a huge value to this community. So really, thank you very much for
that's a national
for your
model
lead on.
too.
I mean,
it's great stuff.
Just such an incredible thing.
Yes.
That's going to be huge for our region.
Yeah.
As you look down the road, so what's your long-term vision for GSI?
Absolutely. I think right now the issue for us is how do we continue to position this community to really make sure that we don't fall in the traps that other larger metropolitan areas have fallen into? Are we anticipating what we need? So we need to make sure that when we think about capital projects in this region, that we're thinking about capacity. So as we think about infrastructure projects, are we building capacity? Are we doing things to make sure that we don't have a housing crisis or a housing shortage? Are we making sure that we're investing in projects that prevent us from having the huge congestion and gridlock that other communities have, that become unattractive to people living there? So those are the things that are kind of our biggest challenges right now. To be able to do some of those, we probably as a community need to have a discussion about should we have a dedicated funding source for economic development where the majority of that goes into strategic infrastructure projects to make sure that we maintain the quality of life here for the residents that are here now, as well as the ones that may want to move here in the future.
Okay. Public policy at both the state level in Olympia and then the federal level in Washington, D.C. can play such a huge role, sometimes a negative role, when it comes to business and economic development. Is there, can you kind of talk about GSI's involvement in advocating for pro-growth, pro-business legislation and policies?
So we engage at three different levels. We have retained a lobbyist, K&L Gates, a law firm in Washington, D.C. to help us with federal policy. That's to make sure that as we have a lot of dialogue going on issues right now, that we make sure that decision makers understand how they impact businesses in this region. So for example, at the federal level right now, we have a lot of discussion going on about trade wars and tariffs and those kinds of things. So when I get a call from a local business that says, I may have to lay off 100 people because my product can no longer go into that foreign country because we're just done until something gets negotiated, that's a huge impact for us. And so we want to engage. And luckily on that one, we were able to engage in that one and find a temporary reprieve. So we do it at the federal level. We do it also at the state level because a lot of the regulations occur there with regard to tax policy. Also, the state invests a lot with regard to infrastructure projects that are critical to economic development here as well. We mentioned the university district and some of the higher education institutions. Well, those institutions are at capacity in a number of those buildings, and so we'll see a request going out for an additional building on the River Point campus to the state legislature in their capital budget. We look at transportation interchanges as a necessary thing for the state legislature as well. And then more and more what we're seeing is we're seeing local jurisdictions get into regulating businesses as well. We certainly see it on the other side of the state. And what we try to do is remind policymakers that most businesses operate in more than one jurisdiction. And if every jurisdiction creates its own set of rules, it makes it very difficult for these businesses to be successful. And so for the most part, we believe that business regulations and tax policy need to occur at a higher level so that those businesses have a level playing field throughout most of the places that they do business.
Okay. Well, in our last few minutes here, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think you're going to see some changes coming out of GSI. I've been there for 2 years, and it's really interesting. We've had long tenured leadership since the 1890s, right up until about 5 or 6 years ago. Some people remember Rich Hadley, who retired about 6 years ago now, and he was only the 4th person to lead GSI.
Oh, wow.
So it was a time to kind of refresh, step back. Some people said that in 2007 we merged, but we didn't integrate, so that's been a lot of my focus. But I think what we're going to see is we're refreshing our brand. We'll roll that out later this year. We are changing the way we do business. We have changed the dialogue with regard to what is economic development. Certainly, I know the county has seen that in our agreement with them about taking this more holistic look at economic development. We're going to try to pull the community together with a consistent economic development website that draws everybody together and that we're collectively partners in that. And we're going to look at how we be better partners with our other economic development stakeholders in this region. And because I think collectively we just do a much better job.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time today.
Great. Thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a reminder to our viewers at home, a video of today's Spotlight can be accessed on the Spokane County homepage, as well as Spokane County's YouTube channel. As always, I'd like to remind our audience that Spokane County has a new mobile app, the Spokane County On the Go. This app can be downloaded on all Apple and Android devices. And for more information about that, you can visit our website at SpokaneCounty.org. I am Spokane County Commissioner Josh Kerns. Thank you again for joining us today on Spokane County Spotlight.